and thank you for joining us for our 7th session in an 8-part series entitled Crafting Conversations, Discourses on the Craft Heritage of the Islamic World, Past, Present, and Future. Please note that this session is being recorded. The series is hosted by the Islamic Art and Material Culture Collaborative, the IAMCC, a research network that brings together the capacities and resources of the Institute of Islamic Studies at the University of Toronto, the Aga Khan Museum, and the Royal Ontario Museum. I'm your host and series organizer, Fahmida Suleiman, curator of the Islamic world at the Royal Ontario Museum in Canada. Before I introduce my special co-host and guest speaker, I would like to begin with our Canadian land acknowledgement. We acknowledge that our institutions sit on the traditional territory of many nations, including the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Anishinaabe, the Chippewa, the Haudenosaunee, and the Wendat peoples, and that this continues to be the home to many diverse First Nations, Inuit, and Métis peoples since time immemorial to today. Now, I'm delighted to introduce our speakers today. Dr. Mariam Rosser-Owen, curator of the Middle East section of the Victoria and Albert Museum in London, England, is my co-host today. Mariam has been a curator in the Middle East section at the V&A since 2002, and she specializes in the arts of the Arab world, in particular, the Islamic Mediterranean and North Africa. In 2015, she was awarded an Art Fund New Collecting Award to research and collect contemporary craft from Morocco, Tunisia, and Egypt. She organized the conference Middle Eastern Crafts, Yesterday, Today, and Tomorrow, held at the V&A in October 2018, out of which grew a guest-edited special issue of the Journal of Modern Craft in 2020. She has curated the exhibition, Contemporary Ceramic Art from the Middle East, which will open at the V&A when the museum reopens in a few weeks' time. Our special guest is the artist, Sara Ouhaddou. She lives between Morocco and France and works in situ and produces artworks based on encounters with communities, craftspeople, and researchers, while exploring heritage sites and objects. Each of her works is a project of learning, exchange of knowledge, and intimate or universal stories. The most recent exhibitions of her work were shown before the pandemic at Global Resistance at the Centre Pompidou in Paris, Manifesta, the European Nomadic Biennial in Marseille, and Our World is Burning at the Palais de Tokyo in Paris. Sara will share some of her amazing past and ongoing projects with us today, ranging from textiles to jewelry and ceramics to glass. You are all in for a real treat today. The title of our conversation is Deconstructing the Code, Craft Collaborations in Morocco. The conversation will last for 1 hour, followed by 30 minutes of Q&A. I encourage you to submit your questions using the Q&A feature on the bottom of your screens. So avoid putting them in the chat. Please put them in the Q&As. And we'll try and get through as many as we can at the end of the talk. Okay, so I invite Sara to share her screen and I hand it over to Mariam. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Fahmida, and good afternoon from London. Sara, it's a pleasure to be talking with you this afternoon. So your work is deeply rooted in Moroccan artistic traditions, and you've experimented with a wide range of different media, from textile to clay and now glass. How did it all start for you as an artist, and what drew you to Moroccan crafts?
Well, thank you. I'm really happy to be speaking with you today. First of all, so I'm French-Moroccan, and here you can see the picture of my neighborhood in Meknes in Morocco. In the back, it's our house, and that's where I I was going when I was young. Until now, I'm still going back, and I used to live between France and Morocco. And so the idea for me in 2013, after my studies in France, was to go back and understand my family roots and why in my family and from what I knew there, my experience there, why the people were breathing outside of Morocco and dreaming about about Europe, while inside the country we had such a rich culture, history of craft, history of architecture. So I needed to understand where here it was, where what was the struggle, what were the struggles, the questions. And also, I was not aware of my family history. My parents immigrated in France as workers in farms in south of France. They are farmers, but in Morocco, you know, when you are a farmer, you're also a craft. You're also a craft community. Farming is crafting objects comes from farming. So by going back, I understood that choosing design studies for me was not such a surprise at the end, even if we were not consciously well, aware about that. So that's why I went back. And in 2013, actually in Morocco, you will not there weren't artists, designers, that many architects working on with the local culture as the basis of their creativity or production. The contemporary art was only happening in Casablanca or Tetouan. It was very few. Same for design, and I think we are like a whole generation of people who went back to nourish that nourishing that desire of moving forward in terms of culture. And so now, almost 10 years later, you can see a different interest from the youth, and you can see how much the country has changed on those questions.
Well, that leads really neatly into my next question, which was to ask you to say something a bit more broadly about the state of craft in Morocco today, and why you decided to develop your projects as collaborative projects with craftspeople, and why you think that kind of collaborative approach is important.
So that's how I have begun. So then I decided to initiate collaborative projects, which aims to me, the purpose for me was to meet with different type of crafts all across Morocco. So here you see an embroidery from Tetouan, and I had different type of crafts where I studied their history. I spent time with the community, and I looked for craft that I thought they were somehow stuck in a certain state or frozen in a certain state. It can be ethically, it can be a dying economy, it could be any of those type of questions, but I saw here something completely stuck, frozen, and I needed to understand why and how can we make it improve, and but also does the people want to move forward or not at all? What are they dreaming about for themselves actually? So I decided to build up this collaboration as experimentation for all of us, for me as for them. And to do so, I meet with them in their villages, big cities. Here is an example. We will begin with this example so I can explain you and you can understand how it works to me. But I meet with them and I stay with them as long as I can to understand actually where are the struggles and what do they want for their future, and if they want to collaborate with me. I establish a sort of protocol then, like a game rules, like the rules of a game. and we move forward. And every time we reach a limit or we answer the question, I keep going. If they want to keep going, we keep going together. If they are done and they don't want to keep going, we stop. So here is the project called Woven and Woven. Maybe Mariam, you want to say something?
No, I was just, maybe you could say a little bit more about how you find the collaborators. How do you decide which craftsmen you're going to collaborate with, or how do you sort of develop that relationship of working together?
Yeah, well, how when I meet with the first, I know like the craft is stuck or is dying, and then I meet with people who are struggling in their with their context. It can be political issues, geographical issues, social, well, always economical at the end of the day, but that's how I choose them. And I choose to establish the relation, a long-lasting relation with them. So together we can debate, speak about all the struggles we have found. So for example, here we are in North Morocco, in Tetouan, and there is a craft school in Morocco established by the Moroccan government. So here, for example, I wanted to understand how the craft school works actually, what the students learn and how, and what do they imagine for their future. When I arrived there, I knew first about this embroidery that you can see here, because it's a very refined embroidery in Morocco and completely disappearing. Nowadays it's old-fashioned. No one wants to have this type of embroidery at home, but it has a great value socially. So I've met with the last class of embroiderers of this type of embroidery in Morocco, and they are learning for 4 or 5 years. They are between 12 and 24 years old. And for a couple of years, they're gonna learn how to make this specific set you can see, or this type of set, which is the wedding set also. It says that you embroider really well and you're ready to leave, get married, and have your family life. But then the embroidery stopped. The learning of the embroidery just stopped there at this set. So how I develop the thing, or how I collaborate, is just by analyzing all of those elements. Then I understand that we can begin by deconstructing the pattern that is here, deconstructing all the codes that you see here, colors, a way of embroidering, and just the pattern itself. So it's a class of 24 to 30 students. And I asked them if they want to do this exercise of deconstruction, so exploding the code. And to me, this simple gesture is a way to deconstruct an identity, a deep, deep one. It's something they're doing since centuries. This embroidery was born in the 5th and 7th century. It's a mix from the North Amazigh people of Morocco. So Amazigh is the name that the Berber gives to themselves. So when I say Amazigh, I refer to the Berber. It's a pattern coming from Amazigh from North Morocco, but also Ottoman, Andalusian, so it's a mix. And people are so keen to save it that they are killing it, actually. It's completely dying. So here we are deconstructing those flowers. And that simple gesture was very complicated. I had to do it myself, but it's a way to begin this reflection around what we are repeating, who we are now. Deconstructing something, to me, is just looking at it differently and rebuild it just differently, but having the same roots. So it's the same nature of things moving forward. And then from all those range of color, we work on the colors, and so I go monochrome. To an embroiderer who is used to this gymnastic of colors, and it's saying something about the complexity, going to complex colors to see a monochrome, it's like doing nothing. But to me, here again, I'm trying to show them how a tiny tool can change everything. And so that's the second point. So as you see, it's different tools that I come up with by discussing with them and discussing the history and everything they're doing and their social life. And the idea is just to give them as many possibilities so they can emancipate. It's tools for emancipation. It's tools to be independent and create value for themselves, and then being able to create something that they really want to do. And then so we went for fashion, of course, because they're all girls. And when here it's struggling, here it was much more easier, and they understood all the application of what we were doing and like the richness of what they were doing actually. So here it's hand embroidering. And at this stage, from 21st student, we were only 3 then, because most of them just stopped. And that's something I respect. When they don't want to keep moving, I stop. The most important thing is that we tried and they were here, they listened, so maybe something happened. Then, as I said before, when I see that we were able to move forward together and unlock many, many steps, and someone still wants to stay, I go even further and I try to go beyond everything. So we are in a culture, this embroidery is an aristocratical embroidery. It's something that says a lot about your status in the society. That's why it's all made by silk. And by hand, the value of the hand, but it's a young generation of women. So then I thought with the last one, a last embroiderer, she was very passionate. She's still working with me. We are still collaborating. I thought about bringing a completely new material to that workshop. And I was doing another research in Morocco about trash, and I found this recycled rubber in big trashes in southern Morocco around Marrakesh. It's burned, most of the time it's burnt. So I bought as much as I could. I'm still buying some. And I knew that the introducing of this new material which will change everything. So that's why from 3 students at the end, I had only 1 woman who was okay, because the idea is to learn the machine. So we had a new workshop about the machine. And so they had to learn all the process again about embroidery on the machine and move from silk to trash. So that was like the biggest gap we did. And also at the end, as you can see here, we only embroider details from the patterns, and I stop them from cutting those threads, which when they finish something, they have to cut the thread to make it perfect. But by stopping them cutting the thread, we are saying a lot about the beauty of imperfection here, and we see constellation and not this initial pattern. So that's all the details I'm trying to show them, so they can then see all their possibilities and how moving their art is. And I just try to move the lines from what they knew to what they can do and have other steps forward. So now on this project, for example, I have 1 last embroiderers. We are still collaborating on those embroidery on rubber. And she has her own shop, and so I've learned a lot in this collaboration, because I've learned that the machines, the tools, the physical tools are actually a great value to create independence. When we taught together, when we learn together about new technology, and because I'm learning also the whole process, then she has the machine at home. She can embroider anything she wants, and so she's doing her own embroideries, and it's not this one at all, because she of course don't like, it's not her taste, so she's making other type of embroidery for her own. So that's for me a sort of a project, a good example of the type of project I'm trying to initiate.
So that I was going to ask you about the sort of the ethics of the relationships that you build up with the craftsmen that you collaborate with, and how does it work in terms of the kind of recognition of their role in the work that you make, or the art pieces that you make. And also you mentioned just now that the embroiderer that you worked with has set up, she's continuing to work by herself. So, how sort of does that relationship continue with some of the craftsmen that you've been collaborating with?
Well, so as you see here, for example, in this case, this very last object we created, the embroiderer, she doesn't like it, and she does not recognize herself in this piece, for example. To her, it's really, it's my taste, it's my piece. But she learned how to move her own lines all the way through our process. And I have learned that the reward that we assume it is, I assumed it is, as signing the art piece with her name during exhibition in a museum, I have learned by coming back in France how much it was important here. But with her, it's she's happy that I'm doing it, and I'm really, for me, it's a normal thing to do. But that's not where the recognition happens. The recognition really, really happens when I keep coming, and we keep collaborating together. And since 2000, I've met with her 2013, I have never stopped coming back. Even if I come back 3 years later, she knows that anytime I can, like even financially, I can come back, I will. And that's where the really deep relation is established for us. And sometimes, so this is, so that's, to me, that's how the value I give them is, and also is it's by giving them the tools they ask for. Because sometimes, so on all the way, I'm learning and questioning this and that comes from us, but it's me looking for the thing. But at some point, they ask me what they want to learn. And so sometimes, for example, we will see it later, but now I'm remembering, sometimes they're gonna ask me to show them, to find picture about something else and help them to create something, or help them to understand how it works, help them to have the machine. And when I can, and here for the embroidery machine, I could do it, I just do it. And that's where we have a real recognition together.
So could you tell us a bit more about some of your other projects in a bit more detail?
Yes. Yes, so here you have seen long term project. The last piece of the embroidery series has been done during the lockdown 2020, and I just received it, and I think it's going to be the last one, because now she's fully independent. So here I think we're done. But if she will always be with me, huh? And here we have an example. So this project I'm showing you now is called Bou Oumlil, which means the one in white. We are in the Atlas Mountains, the highest mountain of Morocco, the Toubkal. And here I was looking for another type of struggle in the country. It's geography. I knew and I know that in Morocco you have some villages that are really, really far away from any city center, from any center. So in this case, in Aïtsouka, the village is called Aïtsouka, you have to climb from a tiny village called Imlil, where all the tourists comes in, and go to climb the Toubkal. You have to walk 45 minutes to climb 45 minutes to reach those people, and then 2 hours to reach the others. So I went there in 2016 for it was a short-term project. So it's 2 months in the snowing period, so the most complicated period, to reach them, to understand what they were creating for themselves up there, what was the economy up there, and what the children were doing, where was the school, etc., etc. When I came here in Aïtsouka, what I have learned is that they have a touristic market. There are actually a lot of tourists coming by, and associations of weaving associations installed, also tourist guide association coming from foreign countries, Spain, France, Italy. They're installed there. What they do is that they provide to the village everything, but all they provide comes from outside. It does not come from their context and their environment. Even though they are farmers, there is sheep, there is wool, there is lots of material over there. They are farming everything, but everything comes from the outside, even the colors for the carpet. And they are making a kind of weaving, which is called boucharouette, which means made by recycled fabric. And so I wanted to do the experimentation of creating something from the context using only the local resources, so resources from the village and around the village, and creating something with that community. And I have met with a great community of weavers, all women, and together we decided to I wanted that we recreate the system of weaving that was specific to the village. So not working on the new looms, not working with everything that was coming from markets, but really what we had. So we collected all the wool we could find in the houses. The women came with a lot of white fabric. And when I saw that, I thought, well, let's choose the white. And what about weaving in all white? Just to focus actually on your value and not the decorative aspect of the boucharouette full of sign. And boucharouette is normally colorful. But they are living in the mountains. It's all snowing. It's all snow everywhere. So something coming from that area could look like the snow. But the white is also the color of the death in Morocco. So here I had many questions many debates to have together. And during 2 months, they did not really understand where they were going, but they enjoyed, and we enjoyed this thing of bringing back together all the rituals of this very ancient weaving techniques. So the elders will build the loom, and then the youngest will weave. And during 2 months, here I try to give them the time for this reflection of having their natural gesture and resources coming back and thinking about their own value. By time, I of course mean the finance, the money, and so give them the time to think about themselves. And as an extract of what happened during that time, I'm gonna share with you the recording, the sound recording of them singing those very old songs that are related to weaving. Meanwhile, they weave, they sing. You can also see online, I think, the movie, we made a documentary about this project, but let's hear.
Sarah, do you just want to mention that it's possible, before people hear this, that you can hear the loom in the background?
Oh, yeah, you're right. You did good to mention it. Yes, you can hear the loom. And the song you will listen to is saying that with our blessed hands full of henna, so henna, I don't know, you know, the henna.
Henna.
Okay. So with my hands full of henna, with my blessed hands full of henna, I'm blessing I'm bringing a blessed weaved carpet. I'm trying to bless. So it's a question of, it's a spiritual question, because weaving here is not anymore only a valuable a piece to the market. It becomes something else. So you can if you notice, you also hear the rhythm. That's how they have the energy to weave all that white and to weave actually. And les percussions, they are also playing les percussions at the same time they are weaving, and it gives them energy. They're chatting, talking. It was a very sensitive, touchful moment for me, because that's when I saw how you revive and how something, because some of the weavers here were really, really young. And no one ever taught them all those. I mean, they don't do it every day actually, because they're working for others. But here it comes back very naturally. It's something that's in your. It's like it's in your DNA. So that this project lasted 2 months, and then I had to leave for other workshops. I hope to be able to come back really soon. For example, here it was 2016. I could never go back, honestly, for different personal reasons, but also because, as I said, it's a geographically very far space in Morocco. And it exploded in terms of touristic market because of the Toubkal, this mountain. And many political issues happened, and for a couple of years we were not able to go up there, and now it reopened. So I hope to be able to go back. The project is written. Let's see what the future brings. Secondly, that's the ceramic workshop. Actually, this one had begun at the same time as the embroidery. The embroidery happened in North Morocco. Here we are in South Morocco, close by Marrakesh. And so it's also one of my very first and long-lasting project. It's still on. This one is really still on, and I hope this year we can continue. In Marrakesh, Marrakesh is very famous for the touristic market. And you have a lot of spaces around Marrakesh in the countryside in l'Ourika Valley for ceramic. And there is different type of spaces. You have very local craftsmen working alone and selling on the road. When you drive across Morocco, you will see them selling on the road. And you have average spaces, and I was interested in those spaces who are mass producing, but hand making, but producing as much as they can to provide the touristic market. So here they produce objects like tagines, so houseware objects, but also gelige, so the art of traditional mosaic, in a traditional way. But so yes, the question is that we are in a we are in this idea of massive production to nourish the touristic markets. So they're not saving a traditional craft. They are selling traditional objects, but they're gonna do everything to take the shortcut to be the more economical as they can. So everything is molded except the tour, but for the gelige it's molded, and they're gonna the resources, the clay they use come from Spain, the glaze come from the outside. And then I had two questions in mind. First, if we talk about just the gelige, the art of mosaic and the Islamic geometry, I wanted to work on this idea of how can the gelige art move forward and be different. And we were in 2013. It's not like now. Now many of young designers and artists have worked on the question. But so here again, I did the same action, like deconstructing the mathematics behind the gelige, behind this geometry, and working on and thinking about a different window to enter that philosophy and the idea of chaos in mathematics. I'm very interested in the idea of chaos in mathematics. So I wanted to work on pieces that will look like broken pieces. Maybe you know this story, but the craftsmen in the art of gelige, when they did in the architectural field, when they did something, when they were doing something very, very refined and perfect, so perfect, too perfect, they will break a piece somewhere, somehow. And that's something the craftsman here told me a lot. And so to me, it was interested to work on something that will look like broken and be a total deconstruction, fragmentation. Same idea as for the embroidery. First we deconstruct, then we analyze, and we rebuild something else. So that's what we did here. I came with paper model. So that's the first thing, like the first questions, like what are we doing? What is gelige? How can it be different? So I came with models that I do by paper, by cutting paper. And then I met with craftsmen in the countryside who is always working for the mass production. And I asked them to go back to carving by hands, but not to do a lamp as they used to do, but to do something way more complex. So that's so first point, the geometry. Second point, in this space, all the resources and the material come from the outside Morocco. While in Morocco, we have all the resources, and l'Ourika Valley is really famous for its clay. So why do they choose that? They choose that because they can't afford to lose pieces. They can't afford to break pieces. So the question and the debate here is, but how happened this thing where something coming from the outside is cheaper than something you have. Where the thing happened, I had no idea. And they had no idea, actually. So that's again an example of a project where the art piece, the piece, is just like a receptacle or a space for debate. And the piece will just be the testimony of all the debate we brought and all the things that overlapped. Because here is the history of commercial trade in the country with foreign countries. And nowadays it's cheaper for a space of this size of 15 craft people working in. It's cheaper than working on their own on their proper clay. So I thought about a piece that will be very complex to show them the potential, the high potential that they had. So by carving with all those different depths and level of clay, well, paper is freedom, huh? There is no constraint. By carving with all those different depths, I know that during the firing, it's gonna be very complex. Each depth is a different temperature. So every step of the space of the atelier, every craftsman or woman here there will have to use their skills at the highest potential to and even I had no idea of the how to do it, actually, huh? And the first year, all the pieces we did together, so we used the local clay. There is a white one and there is the red one. The most famous is the red. But I wanted them to experiment with everything they had. The first year, everything we did and all the time we spent, everything came out from the kiln broken. But that's it's exactly what I want them found. It's exactly what I wanted to give them. It's that very long time for research, technical research, historical researches, economical struggles, and research also to see how it can become sustainable. So doing so, they had to rethink the recipe with local clay and work on the recipe, work on the firing also. And by doing just this, just those pieces and this piece with different depth, they tackle different technical questions. And then when we are done, I also show them, or we also, I also bring them to show everything, so even the pieces that are broken. So here it's the very first piece we've made with this white clay. This white clay never worked for us, and it will never work because it's something that is completely impossible to use in Morocco. It's not working, but it's good that we experimented that. And during the very first show we did, we exhibited that piece, and one just broke just before the show. But it was, for me, it's important to show those pieces because it's how we learn. That's also again another example. So here are the 5 tiles. It's only 5, but with ceramic 5 is enough. Ceramic is unpredictable. And handmade is unpredictable. So I made 5 models, and then I leave space for their interpretation, freedom, gesture, mistakes. And to me, it's very important because it's a way to remember how perfection is made by imperfection. So as I said, we brought here the question of the resources, working with local clay, and the glaze. Same question for the glaze. So I've chosen to leave the pieces unglazed to remember the identity of the context. But now we are working on the question of the glaze. It's the same. Most of the glaze I've seen in the studio is coming from the outside. We don't even know from where. The suppliers are not able to say from where, and the colors are trendy colors. It's the colors of the market. It's what the touristic market is demanding. So blue, majorelle blue, deep red, pistachio, whatever. So that's how I began. To add here another layer, the history of glaze in Morocco. What is the history of glaze? It's also a question of trade of glass and glaze between Morocco and the Middle East. And also the history of ceramic in Sigil Mesa and all those trade. But those questions, the craft people and we had no idea about. So that's how we bring other debate in the project, and we keep going. So now, from that studio, a couple is still involved, and they are into the next steps. And we are experimenting with local glaze, local historical glaze, which is this green, yellow, red, even blue glaze from the region we call Tamgrout, or the blue of Fez. And those are experimentation that we did just 2018. So it's not, for me, it's early. And finally, another example, when you saw that the white clad didn't work. And here I was wondering if the need of discovering, because it's real, we all want to discover everything that's also coming from outside, from foreign countries. So if they want to bring something from outside, instead of bringing those materials that we have the same inside, why don't we open up to something that is an art and another type of art? And so I decided to establish a relation between the porcelain of Limoges in France, the refined porcelain of Limoges, and the same craftsmen in Morocco, and ask them together to work on an even more complex piece. It's a 4 centimeters by 4 centimeters piece. It's super tiny. I think here it's almost scale 1. Huh? It's almost the real size of the piece. And it's the thinnest you can do. And so in Morocco, they learned another type of clay, le kaolin, which does not exist, but can bring many other evolution to the art of gelige. And in France, I'm working with a student in ceramic in Limoges. And in Limoges, the students and the young ceramists are also struggling because of the new market with the big ceramics. So together, it's an exchange. It's another type of exchange. So this project is still going on. We are going to dig deeper on the environmental question, the resources question, the glass, the glaze. So we are working on that for the next future, for the next steps. And finally, the last project I would like to share as another type of project. It's again a short-term one. It was a workshop that we installed for Marrakesh Biennale in 2016. I was asked by Omar Barada to think about something that will gather the drawings or some researches made by the cinematographer Ahmed Bouanani, Moroccan cinematographer Ahmed Bouanani. Ahmed Bouanani, during the, I think it's the 50s, if I don't say something wrong, but he worked for the Moroccan government, and he was asked to do a research about jewelry, Amazigh jewelry in Morocco, and about tales, storytellers. So he gathered a lot of storytelling. He also documented the Amazigh jewelry. He traveled all across Morocco. And Omar Barada gave me those documents, and he just asked me to do anything with that. I decided to go meet with family in Marrakesh, in the Medina of Marrakesh, so where all the touristic market is happening. I was interested to know if somewhere there where you can buy so many jewelries, I could find a family that had the heritage of the Amazigh, traditional Amazigh jewelries, but I wanted to know what those families were doing inside Marrakesh, how they were connected to their roots, if they were not, what was the transformation there. So I've met with this team. Here it's Mohammed, the father, and he has 3 children, 3 boys. And I collaborated with the whole family, and we still do, but in a different way, as you have seen before. I arrived with all those documents. I've chosen one of the tales. It's called Heina. It's the story. Very briefly, it's the story of a poetess who left her village to find her prince. She found the prince, but then the prince had to face he had to do some tasks to be with her, and he had not to fail. If he failed, he will die, and he dies actually. So the story is kind of sad, but it's a story that I have heard when I was a kid from my grandfather, and it's a very famous one in Morocco. So I've chosen one of the most famous. This family is not working anymore in this proper Amazigh jewelry as we know it. They are fan of the Fantasia, so it's a festival of horses, and you can help me, Mariam, here. How we say again the
Horse racing.
Horse racing. So they have chosen to just create pieces for this horse racing festival in Morocco, but not only because it's their choice, but also to make money, because it was an opportunity, a financial good opportunity, when they saw that an actual real Amazigh jewelry is expensive to the touristic market. Tourists are always looking for the cheapest, the easiest, and then the Amazigh real jewelry requires a lot of time and the materials, so it's quite an expensive craft to do. So they have chosen to diversify their products and their objects. So during 2 months, we have created, so this is a drawing from Ahmed Bonani, and this is a piece we created together. This is the space in Marrakesh where the exhibition was held. So we had the library with all Ahmed Bonani work, and it was accessible to everybody in Morocco. So of course the children came, the parents came, they came all the time, they spent all the time with me there, building up the exhibition and reading, looking some images. So this is this is the prince struggling between its tasks and the question that were brought along the way to marry that princess, that poetess, not princess. And that's another piece where I've melted ceramic, weaving, and here jewelry. So the workshop, all the craftsmen had to confront to other type of craft and make it work together. So they had to collaborate again without me, with other craft people to solve all the technical riddles we had here. This piece is super complex, and it's still now. So in this project, when we ended the Biennale, I kept working with them on other type of pieces. I kept coming back because the children were really demanding. So even if it wasn't art pieces, they were demanding on other things, and I kept coming. And the Biennale also did a great work on bringing people in. So many people went to that shop and asked them for creation, and so they could develop other things for themselves.
So many different and interesting aspects to all of those projects, and I'm sure people are going to want to ask you about later. I've just got one last question, which was to ask you about the project that you're working on now on glass, and how that came about and where you see it going.
Okay, I will. Okay, so as you have seen, we overlapped, or we bring in many different fields together. Along the way, I'm learning, and along the way, we are unlocking some spots. Then I I also have to move forward a lot, and I also have to keep going by myself on the research, because if I want, but every time we find the question economical, social, historical, so then I have to dive in. And here, since the past few years, many historical, cultural questions were brought up during those collaboration. And in 2015, so this picture is from 2015, I arrived in New York with Age of Arabia at ISCP New York to do a project. It was a research project. And when I arrived, everybody in New York that I met was assuming that I was writing and speaking classic Arabic. And I'm not. I'm not speaking classic Arabic, and I'm not reading classic Arabic. Even if now, yes, I'm learning. But I'm speaking Amazigh and Darija. And Darija is local Moroccan. So I challenged myself. I wondered what was my relationship to the classic Arabic, as my parents do not speak classic Arabic either. So what was our relation to that language? What is our relation to languages? Actually, we speak French. My parents do not read French. They are illiterate, but they're super smart. So what the question here was our relation to language, and it's a question that never left me till now, until the very, very late projects. So that's the first point here I was looking for when I was in New York. Secondly, as you have seen during the ceramic project, the glaze question led me on to questioning the history of glass in Morocco. Where it comes from, how, when, what's the story, because I have never met with glassmaker in Morocco except one at the Beldi. There is a studio, but it's like the 5 or 6 last glass craftsmen in the country. So that was the second question, the history of glass in Morocco. I went to so I decided in New York to go to a glass studio, because in New York there's lots of glass studio. You can learn glass blowing very easily and learn about different techniques of glass there. And I've learned to do so. I created as I can't read Arabic, but I'm very sensitive to it, and the calligraphy is something. And in the Amazigh world, system of understanding are built up by signs. My parents read by singularities, by blocks. They're able to tell you what a sign is about just by analyzing, just by the shape, the color, the symbols. I want to create the same sensation all the time, and show people how you can read just calling up to your sensitivity and not properly reading with our idea of reading. So I created here a glass alphabet, or an abstract one, where I took the Islamic geometry, the Arabic alphabet, and I just merged them together, crossed them together. Here you have the process of construction of each letters, and to each shape I will match it with a letter. For instance, I will say, oh, this is the lam, this is the ba, this is the mim, but I will not give you the keys, actually, because to me it's very important that you can't read it, and you will never. So when I realize one alphabet, and we work on it for years with different workshops, then I change the patterns and I change the shapes all the time. So that's the first try. That's the pieces which helped me to learn about glassmaking. And stained glass, cutting glass, those are really techniques that I haven't seen in Morocco that much, not at all sometimes. And I wanted to begin by that. This is the drawings that I made, very free drawings before conceiving any system of letters. It's like, it's studies, and those studies are the paintings or the drawings I bring with me to the craft community I'm going to collaborate with. I enter by a drawing door, a poetic door. It looks like a child painting, but to me it's important to come with this not a fixed drawing, to come with this type of here, and en tout cas to come with this type of painting, because I have learned along the way that when I come with an abstract thing, then it's really a collaboration that we enter in. It's not a command. It's really easier. So that's another type. So they look at it as a strange thing. They can't imagine where we are going. There is no technique here. It's just poetry. And then I established the system. Very, very strict system. Where there is no deconstruction. Here you feel the deconstruction and all those questions, and here it's more it's an established system that is going to move. And then the question of as you asked very early on, Mariam, the question of how I choose the people I'm going to collaborate with. And then here, the glass is a complex question. It's something I know nothing about. It just came up during another project. So here I wondered what the very skilled craftsmen in Morocco were doing. It's a completely different field. It's a completely different community. And I knew about a workshop. I knew about a place where craftsmen, and it was only men. I knew it was only men. They were like engineers, and I thought that's where. I want to meet with them. I want to. It's the same as before. I want to understand what they do, if they know about the glass, what they know about the glass. And I've met with them. It's a very new project. It's still ongoing. So many opened up questions. But I met with them. It's in Marrakesh, and countryside of Marrakesh. And those were the first people I asked about the glass, and that's where I realized how much valuable glass. Ancient glass and stained glass was in the country. And I remembered from my childhood that we used to talk about something that is called Jej al-Iraqi, so glass from Iraq. But what does it mean really? Did the glass really come from Iraq? Or is it just a name referring to a certain type of value? I had no idea. and it's still hypothetical. I still have no precise answer, and I hope I will have some soon. But I understood that this material was had a high value, and they were all like, oh, if you can find Jej al-Iraqi, just bring it to us, and we will we will find and remember how to remake and how to rebuild glass making, stained glass, old stained glass technique. We will find out. So I did so. I went across Morocco, in Fez, in Marrakesh, to look for that type of glass. And these days there is a big politic of saving of the architecture in the Medinas, in the old Medinas in Morocco. So you can see very old houses and places being restored. C'est la restauration, it's being restored. And those very old, this very old architecture, Moroccan is changing. It's completely changing. Urbanization, big cities are under construction now. So they have to restore it and save the Medinas. But doing so, when I went there and I was looking for that glass, I understood that those windows, windows from the Middle Age, were not going in a museum. Were not always going in a museum. They ended up in different type of houses. They ended up in antiquaire market, very weird one. So I had to go through all of that. And so that's where this project begins to bring the question of the circulation, the question of the trading, the glass trading in the region between Morocco, the rest of the Middle East, North Africa, Middle East trading, the history of architecture, how we save our architecture. So it's not only about glass anymore, but the glass helped us to go back to all the way. And here on this piece that we made in 2019 and 2020, you see all the different glasses. So the blue is Jej al-Iraqi. We call it maybe, so it's handmade, and sometimes it comes from the 15th century, but I can't even say any good date because no one knows. And the name might come from the lapis lazuli trade. It might have been made in Spain as well, but it's the oldest. It's the blue, the green, and the red. And then it was replaced by Spanish glass, the Moorish glass. It's a glass that everyone in the Middle East and North Africa knows. And then you have the Saudi market entering in, and French, and white. And so in the Medina, everybody wants comfort. So all the old houses, they have trade those windows for new comfortable windows. And I totally understand that, less noise and warmer houses. But where does that glass goes? That's the whole question. And to finish, what we write here, what you can see here, is a poem, an Amazighi poem. Those craftsmen that I'm collaborating with these days are also very religious men, and there is a long, complicated story between the Arabs and the Amazighi in Morocco. And I'm somehow, with this alphabet and this language, visual language I'm creating, I'm trying to reconcile or to bring together the Amazighi world to the Arab world. And the poem written here says, 2 stars unbalanced, they burn. In the Amazighi culture, the 2 stars are women, because the woman used to be at the center of the community. And so we brought up all new debate in the piece. So those new pieces are a complete new debate that we are asking now. Here the last piece, it's I have made it in 2020. It's written al-kalima, which means philosophically the word as a universe when you say something, but which also means in the religion le verbe, the word. So here the colorful one here is all the substance that we give toward all the universe that we give to the word we use, and how the world is losing its own substance, how language is losing its own substance, same as the glass itself. I will finish with it.
Yeah, it's such a fascinating series of projects that you've worked on, and I'm sure our audience is going to have some questions for you. So now's the time to hand over to Fahmida, I think, to manage the Q&A. Thank you so much. That was so interesting.
Thank you both so much. Thank you, Mariam. Thank you, Sara. This was a fantastic session, and there are a few questions already, and I have several as well. So why don't we start, if that's okay? Have your sip of water, Sara, and we can. So we have a wonderful question from somebody from Riga, from Latvia, who says, how prominent or otherwise is the avant-garde in the Maghreb?
So first, can you tell me more about what you call avant-garde?
So he needs to, maybe Albert, can you type a little bit more?
Yeah.
So wait, while he does that, let me move to a question about the embroidery project specifically. Wafa says this was a lovely embroidery project. Can we see the new designs that the embroiderer is working on? The craftswoman's own designs. Is that even possible?
Yeah, I never show them because they don't want to, and I don't want to overstep most of the time. So I've never showed them. I have them in my documents. And also one thing, it's not necessarily something new. They do like something new as what we did during the collaboration. It's more the freedom of allowing yourself of doing something else than what you were asked to do for years. Was that answer clear? You know what I mean? It's more so the embroidery I'm collaborating with now. She's, for example, making school clothes. You know those school clothes, and she embroidered in French classical police the name of each children of a lot of school in Marrakesh. Well, that's an object I don't want to use as an art piece or show, because it's just an object of her own choice as the objects she wants to be making. Do you know? So it's not necessarily a brand new design. I think the brand new design happened more in the young generation of designers who came to see all the exhibition, came to see the pieces that we have made. That's where the real new design happened. You see the difference? Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. I have a kind of, maybe a follow-up to that is, do you find that your collaborators, that they think that the final product that you work on with them is somehow beautiful? Do they feel like they want to keep samples of what you've created to either display or to sell?
No, if I'm honest, most of the time, well, not the glass project, because the glass project, it's different. It's different, but it's very new. But most of the time, like the embroidery project or this one, for instance, no, they don't like it at all. They don't think it's beautiful. They see the value of it. They see a certain type of beauty. They see where they went, but it's not their beauty, it's not their codes. We are outside of their range of codes, but that's the purpose to me. It's really to bring them as far as I can, so then a tiny move can happen. I mean, it's what I experimented. For the tiles, when I asked them to enamel the tiles the way they want, they brought the pistachio. I hated that. I loved it. So it's completely different. So that's why, yeah, no, they don't want to. They don't want to keep the last piece. If they keep it, it's a souvenir. They will not even show it to people, to buyers. It's a souvenir. It's a real souvenir. They're gonna say, "Oh, 1 year I collaborated with this artist. Look at what we've done." And also, they never copied what we did, and I really wished they will copy, but they never did, because to them it's an aesthetic that I brought in. And it's also what I want them to understand, because it's true. That's my aesthetic. I'm not gonna lie. So they want to first step, and that's what I have seen and noticed these days. First step, they want to stick to the aesthetic they like. So she's gonna make clothes for kids with butterflies. And I have no right to say it's old-fashioned, even if I think it. So that's the thing. And that's, so this, for example, here, to her it's pointless. It's really pointless, but it's fun. So yeah, that's how that's what I have learned. But recently, with a new project like the glass one, it's different. It's different. Last year, but we are in different context. As I said, it's high skilled people. Huh? When he sees what he was able to do, he kept the samples, and I'm happy he did, and I hope he will do something with it.
Thank you, Sara. There's another very important question that somebody asks you. You mentioned there were economical issues with craftspeople, and oftentimes it was time that was lacking for them. And you say, how did you ask them to join your project for several weeks or months? Were they paid? Were these jobs paid? The project, was it funded?
Very, it's the whole base of the thing. I never talk about it so much, or I don't point it out as the main thing. But yeah, it's actually the main thing, is that I bring as much financial support as I can, and even in terms of reward, the real reward, the real one, and I'm not there yet, because I'm not there yet, is the financial support, but not on doing same objects, but financial support to support a time for research for themselves. And then support the tools. Very support the tools to creation, to new creations, support the tools for evolution, support the digital tools, softwares, machines. That's also financial support. But from what I've seen, when you support that and you support the time, then yes, emancipation comes also.
To follow up on that question, then, it's a question that we've been tackling throughout the series, is do you name your collaborators when you put these pieces on display in the exhibitions? Do they want to be named? That's one big question. And do you feel also that it's your responsibility to name your collaborators?
So as I said before, with the ethical question from Mariam, naming them was something I did very naturally. Even on my website, you could see pictures of them. But very quickly then in the collaborations, so it's different level of thinking here. Then when I told them, oh, that's wonderful, you're gonna be at La Gaieté Lyrique, everybody's gonna see your name, huh? I saw that they were sort of happy for me, like, oh, well, cool. but it doesn't mean really anything very tangible for them. We don't have the same perception of reward here. That was what I tried to say on the ethical question. We don't put the same value on the same things. And so along the way, I have learned that on this side of the story, the exhibition side, the showing side, naming is important because people want to know. But on the other side of the story, to them, it's not where the value happens. The value is really in coming back, support financially, never leave them, not being there just once for all and leaving if you didn't left a good trace. Like for example, in the Atlas Mountain, it's a 2 month work, but they were paid like for 6 months or even a year. Huh? That's where the fair space happens. I don't know if it's clear.
That was great. So we have an international audience here. You're having greetings all the way from Greece as well. But coming back to our friend from Latvia, he explains,
oui.
the avant-garde question. He says, is there a quote unquote modern school as opposed to a quote unquote traditional crafts tradition? It is clear you are reinventing the old techniques. Is it yet a movement?
Very good. Oh yes, thank you. So, okay, to explain the what's going on and then answer the question maybe better. There is a very famous school of les Beaux-Arts in Tetouan. We're talking about art, contemporary art. It's a school of les Beaux-Arts. The student of that school of les Beaux-Arts, as all les Beaux-Arts you know, are going to work with experiment all range of fields, techniques, and sometimes craft. There is, so we are in contemporary art. There is, as here for the embroiderers, school, government school of craft, classic craft. Between those two, there is nothing. So in terms of education, between those two completely different way of teaching or of schools, there is nothing. There is a very recent school of design. So yes, it's happening. There is a school of design called Les Saves in Marrakesh. So the thing is happening. And since 2010, with my generation and an older one, it's happening. And now we see from all those different doors, so new school building up, cultural spaces opening, young cultural spacing. This spaces from 2013, 15, like Le 18 in Marrakesh. Artists coming back. The avant-garde it's on. Even designers, foreign designers installing in Morocco and working with craftsmen. Fashion designers are coming from the US. So yeah, big changes are happening now. Yes, it exists. You can see it, huh? And if you go to I don't know now after the lockdown, but if you go to Marrakesh, you feel it. You feel the move, definitely.
Sara, a couple more questions, and then we will probably have to wrap up here. Did you find some financial support from the Moroccan government or a Moroccan cultural agency to help with any of your projects?
Yes. French Institute Morocco, does it work? Because it's Moroccan, not Moroccan, huh? But yes, when I asked for it, I had. But mostly what Morocco provide more than financial, more than finance, because they don't have that much, even for the proper craft, like traditional craft, not people like me, but traditional craft, it's a struggle to them. I know. So how can I say that? Sometimes I don't go to ask them for money, but I don't wait for them to give me money because I know there's like there is priority there that needs to be done before me. Well, that's what I wanted to say. There is other priorities before before mine. But what they do, and they always did for me, is to help me with the installing somewhere, meet the resources. If I go to the cultural, Moroccan cultural places, craft spaces, schools, they open up, which is already a big step. Huh? It's already wow, because everything just opened up. So financially, it's not there yet. Really, you will not find funds, Moroccan funds, proper Moroccan funds. Very few, and I think I am not the priority yet. There is other before me.
Hmm. Would you mind scrolling to the image of the tiles that, Mariam might want to say something, but the
Yeah.
V&A are acquiring some of the pieces and they are going to be in Mariam's show, which hopefully will open, fingers crossed, in the next couple of weeks. Mariam, anything you want to say?
Well, yes, I mean, I think it was important for us to acquire some tiles, given how important tiles have been historically in architecture from the Middle East and especially from this region. And I just love how you have taken this sort of concept of traditional geometric tile mosaic and turned it into something completely new and different. And I love the collaboration and the fact that it's a craftswoman you've been collaborating with to make these tiles. And we've been talking about this project for quite a long time, but I remember you telling me all of the different stages you had to go through to create a level of thickness that would stay flat when you fired them. It's been a very long process for you to get to a point where you can produce a panel like this. I don't know whether you've got time, but one of the things that's so fascinating about this work as well is the clay. And you talked a little bit about the environmental issues and the resource issues. And for the panel that you've made for the V&A, there was a long period when you weren't sure if you were going to be able to find enough of this clay to actually make the panel, because the clay is disappearing, isn't it?
Yes, this one. Voila. Wait.
So
This
it's just
exact clay.
if there's time to maybe say a few words about that issue, I think that's quite an important to keep
And
in
at
mind.
the same time, answer you with more details because now I have more details from my friends in Morocco, in Lorica. I had to struggle to find this clay, and the reason is that Fouzia and Said, so the couple who I am collaborating with, Fouzia and Said are living in Marrakesh, right? And they used to work on those massive production spaces. So they get used to import their clay and they get used to the same suppliers. They know where to go. They know where to find suppliers in Marrakesh and in Lorica. And the thing they can find the most is the Spanish clay. It's invading the whole market. Now it becomes la norme. It becomes the normal thing. At the meantime, I could find this clay. They could find this clay if they go deep in the countryside of Lorica to very local craftsmen who are working alone in tiny spaces. Not easy for Said to drive on his motorcycle to go to that resource, knowing that he has it just on the floor. Huh? So Said couldn't find any clay for a year, and at the same time, I traveled in Morocco, and I couldn't neither. And I'm worried actually because I see infrastructure changes in that area, big infrastructure. We are talking about a tiny road becoming a four-way, like a highway. So if you imagine the amount of concrete that they're going to put over there, all the villages are transformed into cities concrete cities. And so you have to go more and more far to find the clay. And that's a question now, because adding to the economical shortcut, you have now the environmental question, urbanization question to add to it. So yes, we are saving samples.
If you can answer Farzane's very quickly, and then I can ask the wrap up question, because Farzane asked, did your collaboration with the craftswomen and craftsmen help them to find wider recognition?
For some of them, yes, I am sure. To be honest, some of them, I hope I can continue so they reach that recognition in the next years. Like the Biennale, but it's not only me, it's the whole thing. For the Marrakesh Biennale, the kids, the Biennale is helping because it's lots of people coming to see the show. When they see the show, because we make sure everybody knows who created the pieces, because everybody's gonna ask me, I'm here. It's easy to ask, or ask the Guardians, or ask the Biennale. Everybody who is asking, we're going to say they're passing through the shop. So the recognition here is wider. But I have to be honest, it's not only me, it's the whole project. For the embroiderers also, yes, naturally by having a machine, you open your customers. It's not the same customers, and at least you have customers where you hadn't before. So in very different ways, yes, it opened two different, and some of them the opposite, and that's where I have to be careful, and that's where I have also. That's why I'm saying it's a experimentation that sometimes worked and sometimes does not.
My question to you is, how can we as tourists make better choices about the kinds of things we buy as souvenirs that help preserve traditional crafts, but that do not stifle the creativity and innovation of craftspeople?
It's first of all, it's a really good question because it's a question I am asking myself and everybody around me all the time, and I think I will answer that on two parts. The first is saying that I don't find, and it's an open debate here. I'm not sure. And I don't think the tourists are responsible for what's happening about craft in Morocco from the very beginning, like if we go deep in the history. I do believe it's an educational question to deconstruct and rebuild. And it happened, I've learned from many other artists and researchers, as I mentioned, like Omar Berrada, Kader Attia, Manon van Osten. I have learned through their work and researches and mine on the field that during the colonial time, French colonial time, the craft-made object, are domestical object, functional object. They were used and they were sold in the market, used every day. Those objects were qualified and classified as decorative objects, as folklorical objects. And back in that time, they said to the people, well, those objects, they are precious enough to be saved in museums. Ironically, it's an irony, I would say, because by saying so, by naming it by decorative, so then the right objects, what we call the right object, so the functional one, becomes the object coming from the outside, the imported object. And I saw it in my family, like the functional object is the one imported. The other, c'est le second plan. It's the other object. So that's where everything happened here. That's where the thing really happened. So it's not tourists. It's something else. But as a tourist, so second part of the answer, if I may say, as a tourist now, the only thing you can really do, the only thing I can really say, and it's something I have learned myself when I came back in 2013, is that when you go there and you want to buy souvenir, yeah, there is this comment on dit this thing where we always think that you're going to be ripped off, or the price is not a good price, it's too expensive, because we assume that buying something in Morocco has to be cheap, or just we assume that the sellers is never saying the right price. Well, there is a game of negotiation. It's a game of negotiation, but at the end of the day, I would say here, just give the value you think you want to give. Just give what you want to give. Don't struggle with this idea. C'est une arnaque, because then when you buy something from Zara, I think that's where the ethical question really happens. Because here, even if you buy something coming from China, the guy who will sell it to you is still a Moroccan guy struggling to come from the mountain to Marrakesh or to Casablanca to bring that object to that space. So an amount of what you're giving is going to that guy, and then the other. But to really buy ethically in Morocco, as a simple tourist, it's a complex question. I can't, even for me, it's complex.
No, thank you. That was a brilliant answer. That was an absolutely brilliant answer. So it leaves me to thank you for joining us today. Thank you, Mariam, and thank you, Sara, and thank you, Yasmin, for your behind the scenes help. And we hope to see you again for our next crafting conversation, which will be on Saturday, 29th May at the same time. And it will sadly be our last session in the series. So join us with Dr. Azra Aksamija, who is the director of the MIT Future Heritage Lab, and she is also the associate professor at MIT in Cambridge, Massachusetts, when we discuss her amazing project called Design for a Nomadic World, the Future Heritage Lab. Details for this event will be posted on Eventbrite shortly. Please don't hesitate to get in touch with me directly if you want to be added to the IAMCC's mailing list. The recording from today's event will be posted on the Institute's YouTube channel soon. So thank you once again. Take care, everybody, and be well.